Hello, Mr. Galloway.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Did you have the wrong meeting details?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I'm glad I emailed you then. Sorry about that.
I apologize. I got out of the current job that I'm in and I had to run. So I sort of found it, but I couldn't get it to work. And since you sent me that link, it was perfect.
Okay, great. No problem. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. I appreciate it.
Certainly.
We've talked in the past, haven't we? I seem to remember your name. I think we've done this before.
I don't remember talking to you in the past. So maybe it
No?
was no.
Okay.
Um,
Maybe I'm wrong. Did you apply for, do you remember South South International Florida Charter South Florida International Charter School?
oh yeah. Long time ago.
Yeah.
Now I think about it, we did.
Yeah, I think I did a screening with you for that. And yeah, if I
That was
remember, you were at
Charter School of Excellence.
Charter Schools of Excellence, and you were wanting to go to a high school because you didn't feel elementary was the best fit, if I remember right.
Yeah, and strangely enough, I ended up getting laid off halfway through that school right after,
Oh,
literally a month after I talked to you. He pulled back on his money because he was being killed by all the other charter schools in the local area. So he
ouch.
cut back, and I was the highest paid administrator. So he took one of his other administrative principals and made her split time at different campuses. And he since closed that campus. He's down to two campuses.
Yeah, I know. Hold on one second. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, I just asked my assistant to send emails to the other people who are on the interview schedule in case they didn't get a message either.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm currently teaching right now, so for me, I finished up with the kids I had and ran out and grabbed my stuff and went. So, and after I speak to you, I got to get over to another meeting. So we're busy.
Okay. All right. Well, I need to leave here at like 3:04 to run down and get my daughter from the bus. So we have about 28 minutes
Okay.
to finish up this half-hour interview. Um, Building Hope, as you're probably aware, is a nonprofit agency that supports charter schools. So we've been hired by Southeast Volusia School of Science and Technology to kind of be their support staff people until they hire their own people. And just to give you a brief update on where we are in the process, the school's charter application was written by some people from Burns SciTech, which is in Volusia County as well. They have since, originally they were going to become the principal and executive director of the school, but they have since decided that they want to stay at the school where they were. So the leadership that was identified in the charter application is not there anymore. So now they're looking to fill that void from that decision. The application has been approved to open a new school. However, the district has not signed the charter contract yet.
Okay.
And they said that the reason for it is because they're concerned that with the void in leadership, the school will not be able to carry out the mission identified in the application. That said, Florida law does not allow districts to not sign a charter contract after they approve the application. So there may be some legal issues going on with them arguing with the district to get that contract signed. But meanwhile, the school wants to move forward with trying to identify who their leadership is going to be as soon as possible. So that way they can show the district that they are serious and that they have serious contenders in line for leadership who have experience with charter schools and understand what they're doing.
Okay, that answers the question I was going to have, because when I read the synopsis, I noticed that they were recommending those two people, the assistant principal, to move over. So that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So the phone screenings will be ending tomorrow. We're finishing those up tomorrow. And then my notes from these meetings will go to the interview committee, and then they're going to decide who they want to do formal interviews with. Originally, the plan was that they wanted to try to finish those up before Christmas, but that is getting really close. So I don't know that we'll get that done. They had originally thought about doing interviews on the day of the next governing board meeting, which was December 19th, but I know at least one of the interview committee members is not available. So my assistant today is working on calling all of the applicants or the people on the interview committee to find out what their availability is. And so by the end of this week, we should have more information about the next steps and when that'll take place.
Okay, sounds good to me.
All right. So today's questions are fairly brief and just kind of get to know you a little bit. And then I'll pass my notes on to that committee. But if we could just start off with you telling me a little bit about your background and experiences and why I think you would be a good match for this particular school.
Well, my background and experiences, first of all, I've been an elementary, middle, and high school principal. I've also taught elementary, middle, and high school. Currently, I'm actually teaching elementary school due to a set of circumstances that I experienced, but I've also worked for a school within a school, and I've run several charters. And, I've also been a STEM coordinator for a district in Ohio, helped set up a blueprint and a timeline for a STEM school that is just now getting off the ground. So they finally got money from the state of Ohio. But I've worked in Ohio, I've worked in New Jersey, I've worked in Pennsylvania, and I've worked in Florida. Um, and currently, I'm just trying to find the right fit. Since I've come back to Florida, it's been kind of bumpy with different things here and there, and finding the right place to be, or one that I feel is going to be more of a family. I like to work in an atmosphere that is comfortable and not tense. And so, and of course, the last couple of years, I've worked in a couple of charters. I've also worked in private Christian school as well. And I would have stayed there last year, but unfortunately, they were running into that money problem and enrollment problem, and combined the head of school with the head principal position. So I took a job with a school within a school with 3DE schools, and it wasn't a good fit. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. I'm used to being a principal. I'm not used to being the difference between a director in their eyes and a principal was, just totally different. So I chose to pretty much leave. They allowed me to leave with severance and pay because of the fact that it just wasn't working out. And I found a position teaching, and I'm currently a little bit closer to home too. I was in Palm Beach County, which was a drive, but I'm in Palm Bay. It's not terribly far from where you guys are, maybe an hour and 10 minutes. Not a long drive. But my goal has always been what's best for kids, and I believe that a good school runs well when you have a leader at the top that cares about kids, cares about the community, and really wants to interact in a positive way with teachers and with students, and is willing to be out front and really support their school in that local community.
Okay. Takes me a little while for my fingers to catch up with what you said, so sorry about the delay.
Sorry, I go pretty fast.
That's okay. Fortunately, I had like an hour and a half of back-to-back, 2.5 hours of back-to-back this morning, so my fingers were really tired, but now they're a little bit warmed up. So we don't know when the starting date for this position will be. When we find the candidate, then it'll be a negotiation between that person and the governing board as to when they're going to start, and how the money all works out and when that person's available and all that kind of fun stuff. So just for the sake of this question, let's say that you started February 1st. The school is slated to open in August. So can you talk about what your schedule, how you would schedule your time and prioritize your tasks to make sure that things were opening successfully in August?
Well, I think the first thing I need to do is sit down and work with, the organization to find out what their expectations are of me, and sit down with them and create timelines that are going to be able to be maintained, and, set up some follow-up points along the way so that we know we're going to meet the goals that we've set. It's always good to have goals. It's always good to have meetings. It's always good to have points of, hey, let's figure out where we are here, so that we're organized, and that way we meet those goals and we don't have to worry about, say, not getting it accomplished. Because the most important thing to me is that building is ready, it's clean, all the permits have been created so we can bring kids in, we've hired all of our teachers, we've got our custodians in place, we've got everything set with the district, we've got the district people that are going to be coming in, be a part of what we're doing, set up. So that way we leave no stone unturned. We've talked to them about what their expectations are. And I probably would also be meeting regularly with the people from the district just to make sure that we're on track with what they want for us to open. Because a lot of times I've seen charters that they've chartered, and when it got before opening, they sat down and said, no, you're not opening because we don't like this, this, and this. And they just do that to cause problems. So having good communication with those people, I had one charter where it was literally ready to close. They brought me in, I kept it open. My job was to liaison with the district, and I did. I set up timelines, I set up focal points with them, and I was able to keep the school open, keep it moving forward. It's open to this day, and a lot of people said it never would. So the key is that, setting up my calendar and knowing when those meetings are going to be and getting there, and also just introducing myself to the appropriate people within our organization, as well as the district, and being able to build a positive relationship with them. That's one of the keys. You build a positive relationship with the district, and they leave you alone. If you don't, they're on your case all the time. So, that's those are my priorities, is making sure that we get open and we can do what's best for children, because that's the key. And then from there, we'll talk about doing some innovative things in the community and really pushing forward. But the most important thing is opening with a full staff that's a good staff and that can actively engage students to learn.
Okay. So it sounds like you at least had a chance to glance at the charter application before we talked today, so that's great. Based on what you know about the school so far, what do you foresee as being the biggest challenge that the school is going to face, and how would you proactively deal with that challenge if you were hired?
I think just being a new school and coming into a new area and bringing students in, I think the challenge is going to be to set up an identity for itself, to really say, hey, we can say we're a STEM school all we want to, but we really need to establish ourselves within that community as a school that does great things for students right off the bat. And so the big challenge is going to be to walk its talk. If we say we're doing this, we're going to do it. We're going to do it well. If we say we're going to interact with the community, that kids are going to be learning projects and presenting projects and sharing things, then we need to do that well. We don't need to be, the school that says we're going to do one thing and kind of plays the bait and switch, because I've seen that too many times. I saw a School of Science and Technology one time that was, School of Science and Arts that was School of Science in name only. It was basically a school of the arts, but they put the science up there to bring people in, and it was a bait and switch. I don't want to be that way. If we're going to say that we are STEM, we're going to do STEM, and we're going to make sure that people understand what we're doing and how we're doing. We're going to basically bring parents in and see all about what we're going to do. If we have to do I'd love to do a preview where we bring all the parents in, before school starts, similar to what other schools have done, but let them see some actual things that teachers are planning to do in the classroom. Let them feel comfortable. Let them talk with teachers. And then you've already built that rapport and calmed their nerves. And they're going to talk to more people. And you're going to do advertising in the community. You're going to do some PSAs. You're going to, whatever you need to do, you're going to get out and about. You're going to go to some of the other school events that are around and advertise yourself. But you're going to let people see that you are what you say you are. The key is that you never want to present yourself as something that you're not. You want to make sure that if you're presenting it, this is what we're going to do. That's key.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is, if you were hired, what would your priorities be when you're hiring your staff to work at the school?
I need teachers that can actively engage students to learn, that have good rapport with students, that understand the standards, that are certified in their subject areas, and that have a desire to help students learn and grow. It's not just a paycheck for them. It's a way of life. And that's, what it is with educators. We don't do it to make tons of money. We do it because we love kids. We love helping them grow and learn. And those are the kind of people that I look for, people that are going to be action people. They're going to be thinkers and not just, people that will sit back. If they come to me, I'm going to look for people that come to me with 2 solutions to a problem they bring to me. That's the kind of people I want working. And if you support those people, they will stay and continue to be there time and time again. If you don't, they won't. So the key is letting them know that I care, that I'm all about what's best for them. And yes, we may not always see eye to eye, but I do support you. And I think if they understand that, they'll understand who I am. Because you know what? I'm one of those people that I may not like what you've done. And if you do it wrong, let's fix it. I'll help you fix it. Just don't do it again. And the key is going to be finding people like that are teachable. And it's tough. It's very hard. But the thing is that you have to really read their resumes. You have to listen to their interviews. Sometimes you have to give them a task to do and complete so that you can see how they can teach or that they can plan. So those are the kind of people that can write a decent lesson plan, people that understand what hands-on means and what STEM is all about, and not just, someone that's heard about it. Somebody who understands that STEM doesn't, STEM can be a situation where, the students move from this classroom to this classroom the next day and that classroom the next day, multi-usable classrooms where we can do all kinds of things in each of the days of the week. And, classroom just isn't always one thing.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Had a student at my window. She
No
wants to. I'm in
problem.
my car. She wants to get into my classroom, but she's gonna have to wait. No offense to her, but she'll get it. One of my colleagues will let her in. Um, Not that I don't care about what's best for my kids, because I do, but
No, I understand.
it's after school. Yeah.
Yeah. So at this particular school, the driving force behind the school really are business and industry leaders, and that's who's currently serving on the governing board exclusively. There are no educators right now on the board. And the genesis behind the school has been that these people who are running businesses are having a difficult time finding people to hire for their businesses. They're finding that the graduates from the local schools don't have the skill sets that they need to be successful in work. So that's kind of where this entire school idea came from. And they're really working hard to try to balance a line between avoiding the label of a VOTEC school, vocational technology, and also avoiding the label of a college prep school. They want, in their minds, to create a school where kids are graduating with job skills and industry certifications and all of the skills that they need for high school graduation. And then once they graduate, they're able to decide if they want to go to college or if they want to go into VOTEC, and both are equally suitable decisions for the individual kid, but either way the kids would have the skills that they need. So not necessarily tracking kids when they first enter the school to put them on a track one way or the other, but to give them the skills they need for either way. So can you talk a little bit about your experiences with this type of an instructional model and how you see
Yeah.
yourself fitting within that?
I worked for 3D schools. Like I said, it just wasn't a good fit, but the model was great. I love the model. I just didn't like the position. And they're a hands-on type setup that's based on a business model. Okay. And what they do is they create, I like the case challenge method, where you find, where they create, where your people in your community come up with a problem for you. So you go to these local businesses and say, I want you to create a problem that we can solve in our classroom. And we're going to learn about your industry and a little bit about what you do. And then at the end of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these kids on a bus, and I'm going to actually let them go to your site, and I'm going to let them present their presentation that they've created for you. And you're also going to send some people into the classroom along the way and help them with the skills that they need and kind of guide them a little bit. And then in the end, you're going to reward the team that's put together the best presentation. And it's not a proprietary formula, okay? Although I know that they would say one way or the other, but the whole idea is that it's basically a decent format, and I could modify it for whatever. But the bottom line is, have those businesses be a part of what's going on in the classroom, and then you get to go and see that place. You get to go and visit it, and then let them show you what they're doing. And they might even later on down the road provide some internships where our kids go and work for them. And then when they get out, they've already got a lot of the skills they need, and it's not like you have to, when they get out, train them. It's going to save the business money, and in the long run, it's going to help that business move forward. And it's just building good relationships with those guys and having them come in, and you have to tell them what you want them to do, and you have to have good people that can really talk the business lingo. I fortunately had a good business manager that was very good at talking the lingo, and he was able to pull in good businesses. We set up good projects and had a good setup, and that part of it worked. Like I said, for me, it was just that what the position that I had was not where I wanted to be. Loved what they were doing. And I have no problem replicating that situation from the standpoint of a principal, because I think for me, that gives me a little bit more, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but maybe authority to make sure that it takes place, because I was liaisoning with a school district and an outside organization. So here I would just be working with the businesses and and the school itself. So it might be a little bit different, but I definitely have the background to get something like that accomplished. And I believe that, once we set up some case challenge type setups, these kids will get at it. And it's a typical STEM format. Almost all of the schools use the case challenge format that was created at Harvard University back in right before World War I. It's a fantastic format. Are you familiar with it?
I've not heard it explained exactly the way you have, but I've heard other schools talk about it in similar ways.
Yeah, that's I kind of added a little spin on it there, but having them go visit the site the site visit is the key.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, you have made it through my list of simple questions here. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you think it would be important for the interview committee to know about you before they decide whether or not to move forward with a formal interview?
I have a lot of background in technology. Okay. I was also almost once a technology administrator, came very close, but didn't quite get there. Built computers, taught kids how to build computers, very much in a technology integration, and a very big on making sure that the teachers that I hire have good technology integration. You know what I mean? People that can run a smart board, that can run the projector, that can do just not just the basic things with it, but some advanced things. You know, the key is being able to use online things in your classroom to actively engage, not passively engage. And you know, I'm a firm believer in you know, having, if you have the technology, use it to its fullest or don't have it at all. And I want them to also to understand I'm very good at liaisoning with business people and working with them to get them to come in and help out. And, you know, I've done that on many occasions. And, you know, I believe that a school like this could have the capacity down the road to have one of the local colleges send a teacher over and teach some classes within that school at night, make it a dual use type thing. That's what I set up in Ohio. That's what they're doing now. They're actually sending teachers from the local university to a space provided by the school district, and they're swapping out the space to bring in some more people from the community, but also students, and they're trading the teacher for the space, and it's a reciprocal relationship. So now that school is another branch campus for that university that's a little bit further down the road. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's providing the kids with a dual enrollment opportunity as well. So those are the kind of things that I have come in and built with different universities. I have some good contacts. I've done the dual enrollment as principal. My last school, I did it with two different local universities here in Florida, Southeastern and Palm Beach Atlantic, but there are others that work as well. So it's a little bit tougher with the charters, but they will come around. We did UCF and UF as well. So those are some things.
Okay, great. You have charter experience, so I don't have to ask you my CEO question. Do you have any questions for me, or would you like anything else you would like to know about the school or the process in terms of where we are going forward?
As far as the process, I think you've explained it. And as far as the school, I read the synopsis and I'm quite familiar with what it's all about. Actually, it's quite an exciting opportunity for anybody who gets it. I mean, it to me, that's what excited me. I mean, I was going to settle back down, teach a year or two, and try to work my way into this particular district. But when I saw the opportunity, I couldn't pass it up. Because for me, you say the word STEM and I'm there. You know, it just to me is and I love seeing kids get awakened by it. It does something in them, the ones that don't want to do anything, and then boom. So I don't have any other questions, but I appreciate your time today, sir. And
Okay.
I'm sorry to recognize you, but again, with that background around you, now I look at you, I'm like, I know who he is.
Well,
Okay,
I work
man.
from home now, so it's either you see the background of my bedroom or I put up the fake background. So
Yeah, I've used a couple of those different things. My last organization had a headquarters in Atlanta, so we did this all the time.
all right. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I'll let you get back to your meeting. And I hope you're not too chilly out there sitting out in your car talking to us.
Nah, no, Florida's not too bad today. It's 60 for a high. Most people, that's jacket weather. For me, that's no biggie.
It's 58 right now where I am.
Where are you?
Ocala.
Oh, okay. So you're up the road about an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, you have a good day and go get that little one of yours.
All right. Thank you very much.
You have a wonderful day.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.